Welcome to Midlife Catalyst, a place where ordinary people share extraordinary stories. I'm Amanda Yachts, and today's guest is Eric Ayers, founder of EMC Squared LLC, an alignment practitioner and transformation guide who helps individuals and organizations move from surviving to thriving and beyond. With a deep-rooted belief in the power of human connection and intentional design, Eric channels his energy into guiding people and organizations through transformational experiences that awaken purpose, spark healing, and realign life with meaning. Eric creates spaces where insight inspires action and intention becomes reality. Whether he's re-imaging broken systems, mentoring leaders ready for something more, or walking beside someone on their journey of healing, his presence invites clarity, possibility, and wholeness. And I believe Eric encompasses every part of what Midlife Catalyst is about, which as I connected with him recently, we were both like, we have to be on each other's podcast because we share similar stories, but also different. And so I want to hear how you got to this space.
Yeah, thank you for that. And hearing your own bio, it's interesting. You kind of go through the story of how we even got there. And so, yeah, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited that we get to continue this conversation.
Me too.
So I'll start from the beginning.
Start from the beginning. And I mean, so many nuggets, like I said, just in your bio of alignment coach, transformation, probably one of my favorite words, awakening, purpose, just so many words in there that I want to hold on to. So start from the beginning and let's roll.
Yes. And those words were instrumental, and they were the kind of like the signpost through my journey, you know. And so I began my professional career as a pediatric nurse, registered nurse, and from day one was so excited about working as a nurse and focusing on being the best nurse that I could. And the path that I took was, like most people, I want to climb that hierarchical ladder. I want to become so skilled and expert in what I do. I kept working on the tasks and the things that I can do until one day I'm like, okay, I'm at that point. Where now? And I work night shift, 12-hour nights, and I'm walking past the mirror about to leave. And I'm like, who is this person? Didn't recognize myself, like completely out of shape in every way you can think of. And my wife, who is very intuitive, caught me, gave me a hug and was like, hey, tonight, look for something good because it's there. You just have to find it. I'm like, oh, whatever, you know? Well, that night I get report. I'm like, oh, I don't like this assignment. I don't like what I'm already prepping. And then I hear my wife, look for something good. I'm like, fine. I open the door and I am met with this energy from a 4-year-old who is so sick, but she gives me this energy that I do not recognize, but I know it's good. And I'm like, wait, what? And then her dad begins to communicate and have conversations with me. And he's offering me the same energy in a different capacity. And I'm like, what is this? Turns out, fast forward, I figured out this was true love. This was love outside of family, of one human connecting to another. And I hadn't felt that because I hadn't given myself permission to feel it for myself. I couldn't recognize it, but I knew it was good. And this flipped everything because I'm 10 years into nursing. I'm burned out. I'm having horrible health problems and everything is declining. And then all of a sudden, this one night shifted everything. And I'm going to pause because nothing ever happens at one moment or one night. It's the culmination of that chasm. But this is how we remember. And I remember that shifting. And I started looking for the goodness in everything I did and started reconnecting to the human service industry that I worked for and with. And then I started shifting into how may I serve instead of how can this organization serve me? How may I serve anyone who comes into my presence? And I started flipping perspectives because that's what I was doing with myself, and people were coming to me, and I started coaching and didn't realize it.
Love it. So obviously your wife could see some signs there. Yes. Is that something typical from her, or was it just an aha out of the ordinary? I'm curious.
Yes, I want to say it was a decade into our marriage, because I started nursing a month after we got married. So we had been figuring out what this is and how do we continue to live as ourselves, but with each other, and how do we support one another? And she was going through her own transformation. And she was diving in, she was learning new things, and she was offering those little bits of wisdom to me. And I didn't want to take it because I didn't want to change. I was conformed. I was here. I was happy. I didn't want to take new information because I knew that required me to make change. So this was like her, but this was one step further and intentionally touching and hugging and saying, no, I need you to hear me on this, instead of just in passing. So it was different, but very similar. And it was more like, all right, you're not listening. Like, I'm going to slap you around a little bit in a kind way. And I need you to hear this because you're creating this on your own. You were creating your own hell, so to speak, and you have the ability to hop out of this any moment, but you have to recognize it. I have to recognize it. And that was the energy that I remember.
So I say this all the time through my transformation because people kind of want to know what was the thing that made flip the script. And honestly, I just got sick of my own bullshit. And for some people, it comes earlier. For some people, it comes later. For some, it takes a life quake or something. But I don't know that really there's another way, because the lasting transformation, right? We can change for a few months, maybe a year, but long lasting life transformation, you basically have to get sick of who you are and take a look in the mirror.
Yes, that the energy of being done with what you're doing has to be enough motivation to say, I want something else over what I'm feeling. And there has to be a shift in that. And because a lot of times we create these negative feedback loops because we enjoy this. We love to complain about it because every time we complain, we get more people and we get dopamine, just a drip of dopamine that just continues, and we love it. And that's where the phrase misery loves company, of course it does, because everyone's sharing in the dopamine of the familiar. But you have to want out of it more than wanting to stay in this cycle. I totally agree with that.
So I want to keep going on your story, but I'm going to come back to that because that's the crux of what I want to talk about. Is moving and navigating the misery loves company folks environments. So, but it sounds like when you made that flip and reframe, you started having an impact on other people in the opposite direction.
Correct. And it was nothing that I was working on. It was nothing that I was actually intentionally putting energy towards to say, I have to fix this and this and this. I was me. And people were being drawn to that because they could see a shift. And that's what happens when people transform. Other people see it. And it's almost like we give them a permission slip to say, wait a minute, I don't have to think these thoughts. I don't have to do these. No, you can think for yourself. And at the same time, I realized that on the way to work and on the way home, I was doing things that was habitually creating this negative feedback loop. And I was listening to different people and all these stories of this is how you demand what's yours. And this is the matrix of organizational culture. And this is how you climb the ladder, right? This is how you make your presence seen. And once I realized, wait a minute, this is not serving me. This is actually driving me the opposite direction. It's taking my emotions, my energy and motion, and driving it opposite of what I want. Like, what do I want? And all of a sudden, an array of mentors started flooding my life. And I call them my intangible mentors because I haven't met them yet. And then some are, like Einstein, and they're no longer with us physically, but their teachings and their energy are here. But Wayne Dyer, I remember vividly listening to him on the way to work. And I heard, well, if you don't like what you're looking at, then change the way you look at it, and the things you look at will change. And I was like, I listened to it. I rewound it. I listened to it like 12 times. It was like, what? And it's always the understanding of just because we're looking at something one way doesn't mean that's truth. That's the way we want to perceive it. But there's always another one, just like there's always goodness. And the quote, do you live in a loving world or a hostile world? Same world. But what are you choosing to look at? Because where your energy Like where your attention goes, your energy will flow. And then it was like, okay, how may I serve? And then all of a sudden I started writing again. I hadn't written since like late teenager, and I started writing, and I was like, ooh, I want to do a newsletter for the ER. Let me write newsletter. And it wasn't about nursing policy or anything. It was like, hey, I know this sucks sometimes, but like, how do we reshift this? And so it was me coaching my inner child as well as other people at the same time. And it was very healing, extremely healing. And then people started recognizing it. And my CNO got wind of one of my articles. And then she gave me an opportunity to go into design thinking training with a group of like 25 of us. And I walked in, and the moment we started, I was like, little Eric, the 5-year-old in me was like, oh my God, now we get to play. Like, this is what we've been waiting for. And it gave verbiage to how I learn, how I process, and how I approach challenges. And it was amazing. And so that was the first step into how do I take this internal aspect of change and shift it into a cultural shift. And that was an interesting parallel.
So those cultural shifts, because it sounds like it was very positive and well received, and you got avenues, but were there obstacles? Were there those resistors? And what was your approach and response there?
Yeah, so during this, it was not well received. I will say that. My enthusiasm overarched and like clouded every judgment that I had, because I thought it was amazing and everyone was going to love it, right? But I went through a year of medical issues, and I had a misdiagnosis. And in that, while I'm shifting, transforming, it's almost like my body is purging, and it's saying, wake up, because all of the years that we've created, we need to get out and we need to do something different. You can't fix something using the same process that created it, right? It has to be different. Right. So I exhausted Western medicine, because as a nurse, I have to go this path, and nothing helped. And the lab results did not reveal and didn't match the symptoms at all. So I went Eastern medicine, and I went meditation, I went inside. And that's when the healing started. And that is when I was like, okay, let thy food be thy medicine, and thy medicine be thy food. And food and nutrition became a huge aspect of my life. Well, of course, I told everyone, I'm like, you have to be whole food, plant-based. That's the way to go. We have to do this. And it's like, you need to do this. And I learned really quickly that people don't like that at all.
No,
at all.
They want a quick fix. They want the pill. They want a Band-Aid. They don't want to replace.
And they don't want to hear how good things are going for you because you shifted. Because again, there's an internal dialogue that says, if I change, it is going to be hard. And I have to put work in. And we're coasting right now. My subconscious is driving me, and we're good. We're good right now. And I'm like, no, you need to change. And even my wife was like, Eric, you got to shut up. I'm going to eat what I want to eat. Yeah. You eat what you want to eat. And then after I got past that and was like, okay, I'm just going to model behavior. I'm going to be me and continue that. I started noticing patterns, and I started noticing gaps. And that's what happens when we tap into our curiosity. We no longer judge, because that's what I was doing, judging, and didn't realize it. Right. I thought I was helping. Yeah. We all tend to judge. And I mean, that's what our default. So when I shifted from judgment to curiosity, the curiosity was like, here's a gap and here's potential solutions, and we can use education to get there. And so education began to create my model of cultural shifts. And so that led me into healthcare simulation and innovation, and continued with that. And then COVID hit, and we went a year with zero innovation after the greatest disruptor that we could have had in terms of creating a canvas for innovation. And after that, I was like, all right, I think it's time for me to step out of the organization and start building. I don't want to call it a fix, because it's a build a model, build a framework, build a mindset that we can begin to initiate within healthcare to shift mindsets from individual all the way up to the culture, and design what we're looking for. And so here we are.
And this is why we resonate and have so much to talk about, because I had the same response to education, right?
Yeah.
Two very similar professions that deal with a lot of trauma, secondary trauma, but that had the opportunity to make some pretty big shifts and didn't. And here we are. So we'll leave that for another day. I have to tell you, this was part of a conference I went to last week and some people I hadn't seen in a while. And I mean, so I've been sober almost 5 years now. Well, I see these people and they still, I hadn't, you see them once a year at a conference and they come up to you and are like, and I had lost like 80 pounds. It's like inflammation leaving your body, right? And they wanted to know what I did. And I'm like, oh, I quit drinking. And they're like, no, you've lost so much weight. And I'm like, yeah, I quit drinking. Like there's no other pill. There's some days I had cake for breakfast those first couple of years, right? So that's why I'm like, I know. And then I moved in recently to the judgment stage of seeing people. And I'm like, if you would cut out alcohol, your sleep would get better and you would have the energy to exercise and do the things and eat the right food. But it's hard because you know what works, but you have to guide the people there. Mm-hmm. And so what are some strategies when we move beyond judgment, talking to myself right now, that you implement and utilize, modeling, you said, what are some strategies that you use to help transform?
Yeah. First of all, congratulations. That's a huge accomplishment. So that is awesome. And to add a little bit to that, people don't recognize the cascade effect of one decision leading to multiple other decisions. And I think that's the value in transformation. And so to answer your question, take the first step, because the first step is going to be the hardest. And a lot of people, the saying of a marathon begins with the first step. But I think the marathon begins with saying, I want to run a marathon. So it starts up here. And then once we say, okay, I want to become more curious and eliminate the judgment, I think it's the subtle shifts. When I find myself in judgment mode, it's because I'm doing one of two things. I'm looking out for me, what I want, what's going to serve me, or I'm trying to put myself ahead or on a pedestal above someone else. And instead of being curious and saying, what am I here to learn? What is holding me back right now? And that's difficult. But once we do that, we give ourselves permission to take a step. Likewise in organizations. Like, I don't know how many times I heard in the 21 years of being a nurse, it's because we've always done it that way. That's no good. Oh, yeah. That is no good. And I mean, that is not a good answer for anything. So having the ability to say, what do we need? And like asking a question instead of dictating, this is what we need to do. The second thing I would say in that is being more focused on identifying the actual problem instead of being focused on creating a solution. Because just like in the healthcare world, if in the emergency department, if we have someone who comes in who's been vomiting all day and they're like, oh, I have a headache, and we go to treat the headache, we're not doing anything but covering up and masking what's going on. So let's give them IV fluids. Let's treat the underlying root cause and then move forward. So design thinking helped me understand how to get to root cause. It's my method of blowing things up and restructuring it internally and externally. And then also like using building blocks. So SimRx is the methodology, and it goes from basic building blocks all the way up to a culture by design, and we design that and everything in between. So it uses the toddler approach. So if you ever watch a toddler learn to walk, they're not very good at first, but they never fail. They take a step in the fall and they get up and they try again. And that's how we learn. That's how we always learn. And so that's why I think education is huge when we do it correctly. If we shift into what is needed instead of what is expected.
Yes. And somehow in there, the toddler isn't worried about failing. There's no fear, maybe a little hesitancy if they get hurt, but they keep going, right? But we shut down as adults out of that 4-letter word fear. I think system-based of it's what we've always done, that fear of failure, fear of making someone mad or trying a different system. But like you said, what we've done isn't working. How do you instill in people? It's a healthy amount of fear is okay. But we got to move forward. We got to take the charge.
I'm reminded of a Buddha quote. Someone asked Buddha, said, how much ego do you need? And he responds, enough to keep you from walking out in front of oncoming traffic. So that's the dance that we have. The ego is here to keep us alive. So fear creates survival mode, which is ultimately what I found out in my healthcare issues came 100% of me being in adrenal, like continuously in adrenals are firing, throwing cortisol, which we're not supposed to live long term with that. That's supposed to help me outrun this tiger that's chasing me, right? And then we're supposed to breathe it out, and then we go back to homeostasis and normal. But we live in these like continuously seeking to live up to expectations and to check boxes and to do all these things that cortisol, and then we are continuously living in survival mode. So ultimately, we cannot thrive if we are surviving. So we have to breathe. Step one is to intentionally breathe. I can do 12 intentional breaths and I can have an epiphany of what I need to do the rest of the day. Like it is so clear and I feel myself calm. So you can't make people do this. You can't make someone go from one thing to another. But what you can do is begin to introduce concepts. And what I found very interesting in human behavior is like a side project. I love human behavior and how people work together. Maybe I'm a little biased here, but I love introducing concepts to a group and you can see the attributes light up in people and let them go forward with what they're interested in. So instead of making someone do something, if someone's like, oh God, I love, I don't know, putting things together, give me this and I'll throw it together. Cool. We just got organic buy-in on this one set. And then all of a sudden her passion is going to lead over as she starts telling other people. And then it starts building and people need permission. People always need permission. We've needed it since a child. And that's how our learning shifts because we no longer have permission to think for ourselves. We no longer have that, when a toddler is learning to walk, they are being cheered on most of the time in healthy, situations. They're being cheered on, even if they make one or two steps. But then later on, it shifts somewhere and all of a sudden they're being identified and highlighted the failures. Well, when did this happen and why? And all of a sudden now we don't have permission to fail. We don't have permission to try. We have permission to be perfect, which will never happen. And it creates us in this box and in someone else's box. And now we're living in someone else's play and we think it's ours. And we think this is our way of living. So we have to understand that in order to get the whole to begin to shift because most people, not everyone, I don't want to categorize everyone, but most people are living someone else's play and don't even know that they are. So how we get them to recognize that is to inherently get them to recognize the value within them. And that's what I found to happen through experiential learning. When they put their hands on stuff, they tap back into the kindergarten where you're finger painting and you're doing things, you're using your senses, which is what we're designed to do. And then all of a sudden we remember, and that remembering is almost like the catapult to waking up of God, I've been in this coma for 20, 30, 40 years. And all right, where do we go now?
Get out of the box, literally. So that's one of my favorite things to talk about is the shoulds. And, we're partially responsible for that because we have gone along in life checking the boxes, right?
Right.
And then so this is the identity and how people know you. So then you get through this point and you're like, I don't want this anymore. I don't want this anymore. And you're great, like thriving, right?
Yeah.
But the people that have been around you
yeah,
are like, yeah, okay, we're glad you got your health back under control. We're glad, got sober, but we're kind of done with this. Like, we don't want to hear any more about it. And to me, it also goes into that. You talked about the ego, but I think when you go through the huge transformation, you release so much and you find that purpose that is beyond self and beyond ego. And I hate to say this, which has led me to I'm not going to stop doing what has gotten me here, but I also, don't want to totally sever relationships. But so what has been your experience in that acclimation of work colleagues, but also then moving into home, wife, friends, all of the things?
Oh yeah. And this is huge because it's when you're so excited because like you feel better, you're sleeping better, you're feeling better, you have this energy that you're like, God, where the hell has this been for so long? And all of a sudden, like you're thinking clear and you're like making impact because now you're you and your body's like, oh, cool. Whew, we can release all this stuff and we can start firing closer to homeostasis because you're not jacking the system up today. And when you do this, you're exactly right. Like physical manifestations happen in your body. Like you change physically. You look different, you sound different, you act different. Everything's different. And once people realize, oh, wait, they actually are okay. They're not going to die. They're not going to spiral out of control. They don't need help. They're making me uncomfortable because I've known this person for this amount of time and this is how I've known them. Where's that person? And some colleagues at work were genuinely interested and hopped on board and was like, cool, I'm not going to do everything you're doing because that's weird and that's crazy, but I'll do some of these, right?
Right. Yeah.
And that's cool because that's me providing sparks of transformation for them and they can take it if they want to. Hated it because they're like, no. I want my negative person back. I want this person that's going to help drive my dopamine drip because I need more of it here. And those relationships kind of ended and I was still friendly with them, but it was no longer the conversations that we used to have. That was kind of cut off. And more importantly, I remember this so clear. And this was the first time I thought about this was my queen, my wife. She said, Eric, I'm having difficulty. And like, she was emotional. And I was like, you know what? Like life's great. Right. And she goes, you're not the person I fell in love with and I married. It's like, well, yeah, I am. She was like, no, let me. And she walked through these different aspects. And she was like, it's like I'm having to learn to fall in love with someone all over again. And that was the first time that grief of the old self came into play. And that was huge because our journeys aren't just our journeys. Our journeys are those that are with us, right? And because our families go through that journey as well. And they have to be given permission to grieve also. They also have to be given permission to transform at their own time as well. Because as you're shifting, they're grieving and they're like, well, maybe I need to change. Well, we all know that when we're grieving the loss of someone, of something, it's difficult to change because we're focusing on healing and mending our emotional self. So that was huge. That was a aha moment of, wait a minute. This is a little bigger than what I was imagining it. And I still don't know the complexity and how this ripples into everyone we touch. But I know, like working for an organization for almost 2 decades, I was 2 different people. And as a people pleaser, as a person who values how people see me or used to value that was hard because it's like, well, if I do start saying these woo-woo things and saying, well, I may not agree with this aspect of Western medicine, but I support your decision. Like, what is this going to look like? And I kind of started like grieving a little bit as well, because that was the person that carried me to that point. And so it was never a failure. It was a thank you. Thank you for carrying me this long. I'm going to let you rest and we're going to take over and we're going to, leave you here supported. And then we're going to move on. A whole lot of words, I know.
Powerful words, because I have experienced this twice now. One with sobriety, that is kind of a given and an understood, and the people that stayed have stayed. And like you said, there's no animosity or hard feelings towards other people. There's no level of conversation there anymore, connectivity. We've kind of lost that mutual thing that bonded us. But this year I have gone through a grieving in the work transformation and shift from leaving education to now being my own boss and having my own business, and then wanting to connect, with other business-minded leaders in that aspect. So then I have people through those work connections that I'm grieving that. Mm-hmm. I've not grieved the job because for me, there was nothing to grieve. I was done, right? But it's the people and the connection, and then, that common language, what the misery is gone, because I know the system is bad. I know every fault. I know someone can pick up a phone and tell me something. And I was like, yeah, we dealt with that 5 years ago, right? Because it's not going to change
Right.
because the system didn't change. But I have no desire to stay in that negative loop. I'm out of it. So therefore, I have nothing to say to people. And it's been pretty lonely. So I've had to acknowledge that and try to deal with it and balance it. But what has your experience been like?
It is very hard. And congratulations on this and on this journey, because I'm a huge believer that our curriculum in this world, what we're here to learn, come through our trials, it's difficult, right? Or it's perceived to be difficult. We add the difficulty to it because we're always more drawn to familiar than the unfamiliar, because our bodies know exactly what that's going to give us. Whereas the unfamiliar is like, we haven't tested that yet. So, and we got to build a whole new system for that. It's just like a business system, a whole new culture. If you build any type of system within a business, it takes a lot of work to build a system, as opposed to just saying, we've always done it this way. We're going to keep doing it. Well, our bodies do the exact same way, or the exact same thing. So yes, through transformations, I think it's two ideas that pop into mind. One is, I think we're forced into being alone because we're the only ones that know how to get out of this. We're the only ones that have the answer for what we need. It's not a one size fit all. And anyone who tells you it is, they're lying to you. It's not. Even what a coach does, a life coach, transformational coach, a business coach, if they're giving a one size fits all, it's not right.
Right.
It's specific to you, your needs, your energy, who you are, your attributes, all these things. And it's a holistic approach. I think the other thing is it's based on the curriculum that we're here to learn as well. So I felt so sad when I was beginning my transformation that I realized I wasn't feeling emotions. So working in pediatrics, I prided myself on detaching from situations emotionally. But I didn't realize that I couldn't turn that back on when I wanted to. So I was turning it off to everything. And I was angry all the time. Turns out I was super sad. It was being expressed as anger because that was the only way I knew. So I went through a lonely time so I could learn emotions. And I felt extremely lonely, but no one could help me with this. This was deep work that I made a deal, and I was like, hey, I want to feel. And it's almost like God, the universe, source was like, are you sure? Like, yeah, I have to. And then getting through that and understanding my emotions, naming them, thanking them, and realizing that there's no good or bad emotion. Emotions are here to guide us. And then learning my human design, I'm an emotional generator. So emotions drive my decisions. But how long did I live without feeling emotions? And therefore my decisions were someone else's. They weren't mine. So no wonder I was way over here out of alignment. And the journey back to alignment, I think that's the transformations that we take. And I think we have different alignment paths, whether it's business, whether it's personal, but they all overlap. So again, a lot of words, but the loneliness, I think that is built into the equation strategically to make us uncomfortable. And also identify our values, because when you connect with someone after being lonely, it's freaking intentional. And it's like, we're not going to gossip here. Like, I want to know about you.
Right.
Like, I want to dive into your life and tell me about you. And all of a sudden, this Ubuntu, I am because we are spirit, evolves into human connection, which is ultimately what we're here to do.
Ubuntu. I've heard it now, and you say it, but it only came into my vocabulary like a month ago, and now it's everywhere. So I'm just fascinated by that concept.
Likewise, it's during my journey, especially during my leadership journey, Ubuntu entered my life. And I the first time I was introduced to it was the concept of when someone in the South African tribe makes a mistake. It's the understanding that we already beat ourselves up enough that we're like, dang, I could have done this better. We don't need anyone telling us anything bad because they can't tell us anything worse than we're telling ourselves. So what they do is they put them in the middle of the group in the community, surround them, and start telling them the attributes and gifts that they bring to them in the community. And all of a sudden, like hours or days later, this person is empowered now because they're like, the 999,000 things that I do amazing totally outweighs this one small mistake that I did. What if we did that in leadership? Like, what if we brought humanity back into leadership? And that was the introduction to Ubuntu for me. And then it just grew into something of a underlying, it's like my mind just blanked on the mushroom, the way that they communicate with the world, the mycelium, how they communicate, it's the Ubuntu is the communication through humanity.
I love that. And we could all benefit from focusing on the positive and the strengths of others through kindness, gratitude, rather than always going to the negative. We're so wired. And it's like you said, there are 99 positives, and focusing on that.
Yeah. Because that's what we did as a toddler.
Right.
Like,
Great.
how many times did I fall when I was trying to walk? But I didn't hear about the falls. I heard about the amazing step that I took. Well, it wasn't amazing. It was at that time. So it's all in perspective. It's all how we look at it. Yeah. So yes, to your point, when you start being intentional about the other person and being human-centered, then things shift. And that goes from personal, one-on-one, all the way to leading an organization. It's like we're missing the humanity. I will say it. I think healthcare is missing humanity. I think it's the missing piece. I think education is missing the humanity. It's been removed from it. But we're teaching and we're treating people, and they should be at the core. So how do we bring that back? This is the journey.
It is. And the treatment is, again, individualized. It is not a one size fits all within even those constructs.
Yes, and it's continuous, because once it's implemented, it's going to offer you the opportunity to see the gaps, and you get to shift those, and you keep shifting. Just like our solo journey will never change. Like we're always transitioning into who we need to become. We're always peeling back the layers or going farther. So true is with everything that we do. When people are in the mix, we have the ability to continue the expansion. It'll never end. It's continuous.
Well, I love that. It will never end.
Yeah.
Because there's always someone, something, a different concept that we're like, wow, okay. So any tips through your coaching practice, through your own journey that people can take? Maybe they're not making these career changes or other things, but what are some quick, simple things people can walk away with and start?
Yeah, this is where it gets
start
difficult.
With the positive, people.
It's like,
start with the positive and the strengths.
Yeah, there's always two sides to what you're looking at. Start identifying what you want, because we tend to talk about what we don't want. And the law of attraction tells us that whatever your focus is on, that's what you're going to get, because you're going to draw more of that attention to you. So focus on what you want. Have a clear picture of what you want. Step 2, see it and feel what it would feel like if you had that. And this sounds so weird and so bizarre, and it's absolutely amazing when you do it. That would be the first tip, is match the thought, tap into your imagination, because imagination is everything. It's more important than knowledge, according to Einstein. And that's our creative power. So tap into that. If you are feeling so out of context and so out of control or chaotic, I love this, because chaos is stuff outside of you. So back to that loneliness, something I learned in my loneliness is when there's chaos, I need to go within. So if you're feeling chaotic, this sounds cliche, but if you do it with intention, is power. Breathe. Close your eyes, not while you're driving. Please don't do that while you're driving. Get a calm space, close your eyes, and breathe and focus on breath. The easiest way is 4 or 5 seconds in, hold it for 4 or 5 seconds, and then out. And repeat this, and it's rhythmic. And what it does, it tells your nervous system you're safe. You're not running from anything. You don't have to fight anything. You are safe, and your cortisol is lowered because your adrenals relax. So at a pathophysiological level, you're calming. And then if you say, I am well, I am loved, I am enough, over and over and over as you're breathing, all of a sudden you're well, you're loved, and you're enough. And if we can innately feel those 3 things, there's not a damn thing in this world that can stop us from getting to what we want or what we desire, because that's our true potential. And I think those 2 things are super difficult when we're living in a go world, to shift and come back internally into self and say, all right, what do I want? We're going to start with breath.
I'm a huge proponent of breath work. I even start my workshops and conferences with everyone getting centered and grounded by breathing. Einstein. What are you reading? I love to know what people are reading and what podcasts they listen to.
I'm doing less reading right now and more writing. This is the first time I'm actually saying this out loud. So I'm really close to the book launch, and it's the SimRx modality, the method from the kits to the future of healthcare education and everything in between. It's the roadmap of here's how we get there. And I'm super excited, like crazy excited about this. This has been a germination of work, since personally transforming. So been doing a lot of that. I pick up books sometimes I will hop back into, like, one of my favorite is Power versus Force. If any of the listeners have never read this, read it. Power versus Force, and then the follow-up is Letting Go, and shows you how disempowering or empowering things like food, thoughts, emotions, what they do to us. And so that's why breathing is so important, because once we shift, we're actually vibrating at a higher level, and our bodies and our muscles respond with strength to this. And so there's a cool little muscle test in there that you can do, that you can test, is this food empowering or disempowering? And so it's interesting.
Love that. So where can people find this, your book, your roadmap, you?
Yes. So my website is lifebydesign.me, and there will be a landing page on there with the book. It's currently in process, but you can check out, I have two different pathways. I have Aligned by Design, which is one-on-one coaching, basically one-on-one transformations of, there's a journey of transformation, a 6-week deep dive that we go together based on your needs. And then organizations, there's Culture by Design, because ultimately that's what we're doing. We're designing the culture that creates empowerment, and it's created through the empowering process. So, which is what the book is. And so you can find me there. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's the two main places. I've just started Instagram. It's @lifebydesign_Eric, or @lifebydesign_Eric for Instagram. So I'm still getting my feet wet with Instagram, but any of those places.
Well, and I can attest to how hard and rigorous writing a book is and getting your curriculum out there. So huge congratulations and kudos to you, because that right there is a marathon.
It is. The editing process is totally different than the writing,
Right.
And it's like, it's almost like 2 marathons.
Yep. One marathon was good enough. Okay, move on. Anything else you want to say or wrap up before we sign off?
Yeah, I do want to say thank you for this opportunity, for this platform. And if you're listening, go within, like, trust yourself. It's your innate wisdom's there. You just haven't given it permission. So we're giving you permission to tap into that right now and listen. And you may not hear it right away, but you will. And know that we believe in you, and that's all the belief you need to begin believing in yourself and moving forward. So thank you. Thank you for this.
Thank you for that. Made some notes to my own self, some little reminders there that I needed. So, okay. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And all of the links and resources and references will be in the show notes and linked on my Substack. So more information to come. I am so grateful to Coach Eric for joining us today. I got so much out of this episode that I immediately texted 3 people telling them little nuggets that I took away from this recording. So for more information, be sure and read the show notes, or go to midlifecatalyst.net or amandayachts.substack.com to get all of the links and find out more about Coach Eric. But in the meantime, make sure you're breathing and stay curious by asking yourself, what am I here to learn? And then get still, get quiet, and go within to find that answer. Get still, get quiet, and go within to find that answer, because everything you need to know is inside of you. Trust that instinct and intuition, and the answers will come. As always, I'm Amanda Yachts, and if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave a comment or review, and share with a friend to take along on this journey of ordinary people sharing extraordinary stories. And remember, AI can do a lot, but it cannot write your life's narrative. Be the author of your own story.